I stood in that venue coordinator's office, my hand trembling as I signed the cancellation form. $50,000. Gone. Just like that. But you know what? Watching her face drain of color when she got that phone call from the venue was worth every single penny. My name is Diane Morrison, and I'm 68 years old. I've been a widow for 12 years now, raised my son Michael on my own after his father passed, and I thought I'd seen every kind of heartbreak life could throw at me. I was wrong. This story starts about 18 months ago, on a crisp October evening in Charlotte, North Carolina. Michael had been dating this woman, Jessica, for about 8 months. I hadn't met her yet. Every time I'd suggest dinner or coffee, there was always some excuse. She was busy with work. They had plans. She wasn't feeling well. My son would assure me it wasn't personal, that Jessica was just shy, that she wanted everything to be perfect when we finally met. I should have known then. I should have paid attention to that knot in my stomach. When I finally met Jessica, it was at a restaurant Michael had chosen, one of those trendy places downtown where the portions are small and the prices make your eyes water. I got there early, like I always do, and waited at the table Michael had reserved. Then I saw them walk in. She was beautiful. I'll give her that. Tall, blonde, the kind of woman who looks like she just stepped out of a magazine. Designer dress, expensive handbag, everything coordinated perfectly. And the way she looked at me when Michael introduced us, I saw it immediately. That quick scan from head to toe, the barely concealed disappointment, the tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So you're Michael's mother," she said, and there was something in her tone. Not quite rude, but not warm either, like she was checking off a box on some list. Throughout dinner, she dominated the conversation, talked about her job in pharmaceutical sales, her condo in the expensive part of town, her trips to Europe, her important clients. Every story seemed designed to showcase how successful she was, how refined, how cultured, and every story seemed to have an edge to it, a subtle comparison that made my life seem small. When I mentioned I'd been a teacher for 35 years before retiring, she said, "Oh, how sweet, public service." Like I'd said, I volunteered at a pet shelter on weekends. When I talked about the little house I'd lived in for 40 years, the one where I raised Michael, she said, "How quaint. Michael told me it's in the older part of Charlotte." The way she said older made it sound like I lived in a condemned building. But Michael was glowing. He was so in love, so proud to have us together. And I smiled and nodded and told myself I was being oversensitive, that I was looking for problems where there were none. My son was happy. That's what mattered. 3 months later, on New Year's Eve, Michael called me. I could hear the excitement in his voice before he even said the words. "Mom, I proposed. She said yes. We're getting married." I was happy for him. Truly I was. But that knot in my stomach tightened. The wedding planning started immediately. Jessica had been waiting for this her whole life, apparently. She had Pinterest boards going back years. She knew exactly what she wanted, down to the specific shade of blush for the napkins. And she made it very clear that this was her wedding, her vision, her day. I offered to help. I'm not wealthy, not by any stretch, but I've been careful with money my whole life. My late husband's life insurance, my teacher's pension, some smart investments over the years. I had about $70,000 in savings. I'd planned to give Michael and Jessica $20,000 as a wedding gift. "That's so generous, Mom," Michael said when I told him. "Are you sure?" "Sweetheart, I've been saving for your wedding since you were born," I said. "This is what I want to do." But when I offered the money to Jessica, suggesting she could use it however she wanted for the wedding, her response was cool. "That's very kind," she said. "We'll put it toward the honeymoon." Not thank you. Not how wonderful. Just a dismissal, like I'd offered to contribute pocket change. As the planning progressed, I was systematically shut out of everything. Jessica didn't want my input on the flowers. My opinion on the dress didn't matter. When I suggested a few family friends I'd love to invite, people who'd known Michael since he was a baby, Jessica said the guest list was already full. "It's going to be an intimate affair," she told me. "Just 150 of our closest friends and family." 150 people was intimate. Right, but I bit my tongue. I showed up when I was told to show up. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I was determined to be the kind of mother-in-law who didn't cause problems, who didn't interfere, who let her son live his own life. The venue Jessica chose was spectacular. The Ashford Estate, this gorgeous historic mansion with manicured gardens, crystal chandeliers, the works. I'd driven past it dozens of times over the years, had admired it from the road, but never imagined I'd have any reason to set foot inside. Jessica showed me pictures on her phone one afternoon when we were all having lunch together. "It's perfect," she gushed. "Absolutely perfect. It's $50,000 just for the venue, not including catering or anything else, but Daddy said he'd take care of it." Her father, Robert Kingston, was some big shot in commercial real estate. Money was clearly not an issue for the Kingston family. Jessica made sure everyone knew it. About 6 months before the wedding, I did something I hadn't planned to do. I went to the Ashford Estate myself. I told them I was interested in potentially booking it for an event, and they gave me a tour. It was more beautiful in person than in any photograph. The grand ballroom with its soaring ceilings and elegant crown molding. The gardens where the ceremony would take place, with the rose arbor and the fountain. The bridal suite with its antique furniture and crystal mirror. I found myself talking to Margaret, the venue coordinator. She was a warm woman, probably in her 50s, with kind eyes and an easy smile. "Is this for a wedding?" she asked. "My son's, actually," I said. "They've already booked it for October." Her face lit up. "Oh, the Kingston wedding. Yes, that's going to be absolutely beautiful. Jessica has been very particular about every detail." "I bet she has," I said, and we both laughed. We talked for almost an hour. Margaret showed me photos of past weddings they'd hosted, told me about the history of the estate, and then, almost casually, I asked about the booking. "Have they paid the deposit?" I asked. Margaret's smile faltered slightly. "Well, that's been a bit of an issue, actually. Jessica's father initially said he'd wire the deposit, but it's been several months now. We've been flexible because Jessica's been so enthusiastic, but we typically require a 50% deposit to hold the date." Something clicked in my mind. An impulse, maybe. Or maybe I was just tired of feeling useless, of being pushed to the sidelines of my own son's wedding. "What if I paid it?" I asked. Margaret looked surprised. "The deposit?" "The whole thing," I said. "The entire venue fee. All $50,000. She stared at me. "Mrs. Morrison, that's very generous. But are you certain? That's a substantial amount." I was certain. For the first time in months, I felt certain about something. "I want to do this for my son," I said. "But I have one condition. No one can know I paid for it. Not Jessica, not her father, not even Michael. As far as anyone knows, Robert Kingston is still planning to pay for the venue. Can you keep this between us?" Margaret hesitated. "That's highly unusual." "I know," I said, "but it's important to me. I don't want any fuss. I don't want Jessica to feel obligated or uncomfortable. I just want to make sure my son has the wedding venue his fiancée has her heart set on." After some discussion and consultation with her manager, they agreed. I wired the money the next day. All $50,000. More than 2/3 of my savings gone in one transaction. But I felt good about it. I felt like I was doing something meaningful for my son, and I kept my secret. Over the following months, I watched Jessica continue to plan her dream wedding. She hired the most expensive caterer in Charlotte. She flew to New York twice for dress fittings. She had custom invitations printed on handmade paper that cost more per invitation than I used to spend on a week's worth of groceries. And her treatment of me didn't improve. If anything, it got worse. She'd make little comments about my clothes. "Diane, you should really update your wardrobe. Michael's going to have important colleagues at this wedding." About my hair. "Have you thought about trying a different salon? I know a wonderful stylist who could do something more modern with your cut." About my house. "When are you going to sell that place and move into something more manageable? Michael worries about you being in such an old house all alone." That wasn't true. Michael had never said anything like that. But Jessica had a way of using my son as a shield for her own opinions. I endured it all. I told myself it would get better after the wedding, that once she and Michael were married, once she felt secure, maybe she'd warm up to me. I was a fool. The incident happened on a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks before the wedding. I'd been invited to Jessica's bridal shower, though I got the distinct impression the invitation was more obligation than genuine desire for my presence. The shower was at Jessica's mother's house, another showcase of wealth. Vaulted ceilings, imported Italian marble, more square footage than anyone could possibly need. There were about 30 women there, all of them polished and perfect, all of them part of Jessica's world. I brought a gift. I'd spent weeks thinking about it, trying to find something meaningful. I finally settled on a handmade quilt. I'd learned to quilt from my own mother, and I'd made this one specifically for Jessica and Michael. It had taken me 3 months working on it every evening. Each square represented something: their first date, their engagement, meaningful places and moments. I'd embroidered their initials in the corner along with their wedding date. I was proud of it. I thought it was beautiful. Jessica opened presents for over an hour: KitchenAid mixers, Le Creuset cookware, crystal vases, luxury linens with thread counts I couldn't even pronounce. Her friends had clearly spent hundreds, maybe thousands, on their gifts. When she got to mine, I saw her face change. She pulled the quilt out of the box, and for a moment I thought I saw genuine confusion. "It's a quilt," I said, my voice sounding too loud in the suddenly quiet room. "I made it myself. Each square represents something special about you and Michael." Jessica looked at the quilt like I'd handed her a used dish rag. "How rustic," she said finally. Her friends tittered. Actual tittering, like we were in some British period drama. "I'm sure it took a lot of time," Jessica's mother added, her tone making it clear that time was about all it had cost. But Jessica wasn't done. She set the quilt aside, barely glancing at the detailed work I'd put into it, and moved on to the next gift with obvious relief. I sat there, my face burning, telling myself it didn't matter. She didn't have to love it. Not everyone appreciated handmade gifts. But then, about 20 minutes later, I went to use the bathroom. I was in the hallway when I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Jessica's voice and her best friend, Brittany. I stopped. I don't know why. Maybe some instinct told me I needed to hear this. "God, did you see that quilt?" Brittany was saying, and she sounded like she was trying not to laugh. "What is this, 1950? "I know," Jessica said. I should have expected something like that from her, honestly. Michael's mother is so... I don't even know how to describe it. Frumpy? Basic? "She seems sweet, though," Brittany offered. "Sweet doesn't pay for designer shoes," Jessica said, and they both laughed. "Honestly, Brittany, you should see the house she lives in. Michael is embarrassed by it. He told me she barely has any savings, spent everything putting him through college. Which is noble, I guess, but kind of pathetic, too. Like, couldn't she have done both?" My blood went cold. "At least you won't have to deal with her much," Brittany said. "Once you're married, you can keep your distance." "Thank God," Jessica said. "Can you imagine having her around our kids someday, teaching them to quilt and clip coupons? No, thank you. I told Michael we're setting boundaries immediately. Sunday dinners once a month, maximum. And holidays will rotate with my family, so she gets every other year at best." "What about the wedding gift?" Brittany asked. "Did she actually give you guys money?" $20,000, Jessica said, and I could hear the dismissiveness in her voice. "We're putting it toward the honeymoon. It's not nothing, but it's not exactly impressive either. Daddy's spending 10 times that on the wedding." "Well, at least you got something out of her," Brittany said. They laughed again. I stood in that hallway, my hand on the wall to steady myself, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Every word was a knife. Every laugh was a twist of the blade. I went back to the party. I sat through the rest of it with a smile frozen on my face. I admired the other gifts. I ate the tiny sandwiches and drank the champagne. I complimented Jessica on everything, and inside I was done. That evening, I called Margaret at the Ashford estate. "Margaret, it's Diane Morrison," I said. "I need to ask you something about the Kingston wedding booking." "Of course," she said. "Is everything all right?" "The contract for the venue," I said. "Who is it under? Who has the authority to cancel?" There was a pause. "Well, since you paid for it, the contract is technically under your name. We put Jessica Kingston as the primary contact for planning purposes, but you're the client of record." "And if I wanted to cancel," I said slowly, "what would be the financial penalty?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Mrs. Morrison, the wedding is less than a month away." "I know," I said. "I'm asking hypothetically." "Hypothetically," she said carefully, "you'd forfeit the entire payment. We can't possibly rebook a date this close to the wedding. You'd lose all $50,000. "I understand," I said. "Thank you, Margaret." I sat with that information for 3 days. I barely slept. I played every conversation with Jessica over in my mind, looking for signs I'd missed, moments where I could have handled things differently. But I kept coming back to her words. Frumpy, basic, pathetic, and worse, the plans she'd already made to cut me out of my son's life, out of my potential grandchildren's lives. This wasn't going to get better after the wedding. This was who Jessica was. This was who she was always going to be. On Sunday, I called Michael. "Honey, can you come over? I need to talk to you about something." He came that afternoon, alone. Jessica had a spa day scheduled. We sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd helped him with his homework every night, where we'd had breakfast together every morning, where we'd cried together after his father died. "Michael," I said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me." I told him everything, about overhearing Jessica at the bridal shower, about the things she'd said about me, about him, about our family, about her plans to limit my time with them, to keep me at arm's length. I watched his face as I talked, saw the disbelief, then the hurt, then something that looked like recognition. "Mom," he said when I finished, and his voice was thick. I don't know what to say. "Has she ever said things like that to you?" I asked. "About me? About our family?" He was quiet for a long moment. "She's made comments," he admitted finally, "about the house, about how you're too involved sometimes. But I thought she was just nervous about the wedding, about starting our life together. I didn't think—" "She thinks I'm an embarrassment," I said quietly. "She thinks our family isn't good enough for her." "I'll talk to her," Michael said. "I'll tell her that's not acceptable, that if she can't respect my mother, we have a problem." "I'm glad," I said. "But Michael, there's something else I need to tell you." I told him about the venue, about paying for it, about keeping it secret. His eyes went wide. "Mom, that's $50,000. "I know. That's most of your savings." "I know. Why would you do that?" "Because I wanted my son to have the wedding his fiancée wanted," I said. "Because I loved you, and I thought maybe if I did this, if I helped make her dream come true, she might see me differently, see us differently." Michael put his head in his hands. "Mom, I'm canceling it," I said. His head snapped up. "What?" "The venue. I'm canceling the booking." "You can't do that. The wedding is in 3 weeks. There's no time to find another place. All the guests are invited. Everything is planned around that venue." "I know," I said, "but I'm not going to spend $50,000 on a wedding for a woman who thinks I'm pathetic, who plans to cut me out of your life, who doesn't respect you or where you come from." "But you'll lose all the money," Michael said. "I know," I said again, "and I don't care. The money is gone either way. At least this way I'm not funding my own humiliation." "Mom, please," Michael said. "Don't do this. Let me talk to Jessica. Let me fix this." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, and I saw him clearly. Saw how much he wanted to believe this could be fixed. How much he wanted both the women in his life to get along. How much he loved Jessica, despite what I now knew about her. "If you can talk to Jessica," I said carefully, If she can genuinely apologize, not just say sorry because she got caught, but really understand why what she said was hurtful and wrong, then I'll reconsider. It was a lie. I'd already made up my mind, but I wanted to give my son a chance to see for himself who he was planning to marry. Michael left. He said he'd talked to Jessica that evening, that they'd come over together the next day. They didn't come the next day, or the day after that. Finally, 5 days later, Michael called. He sounded exhausted. "Mom, can I come over?" "Of course." He arrived looking like he hadn't slept in days. We sat in the living room and he told me everything. He'd confronted Jessica that night. At first, she'd denied everything, said I must have misheard, that I was being oversensitive. But Michael pressed her, and eventually she'd admitted to some of it, downplayed it, said she was just venting to her friend, that everyone complains about their in-laws. But when Michael told her what I'd done with the venue, everything changed. "She lost it, Mom," Michael said. "Started screaming about how you had no right, how this was her wedding, how you were sabotaging her big day out of spite." "I haven't canceled it yet," I said. "She called you a bitter old woman," Michael said quietly. "Said you were jealous of her, that you'd never been able to move on from being a poor teacher's widow, that you resented her for having the life you never did." I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. "And then she gave me an ultimatum," Michael continued. "She said if you cancel that venue, the wedding is off, not postponed. Off. She'll break up with me." We sat in silence for a moment. "What do you want me to do?" I asked finally. Michael looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I want you to not cancel the venue," he said. "I want to marry the woman I thought I was in love with, but I don't think that woman exists, does she?" "Oh, sweetheart," I said. "She's been lying to me," he said. "Or I've been lying to myself. Maybe both. I kept making excuses for her behavior, telling myself she was just stressed, that she'd be different once we were married. But she won't be, will she?" "No," I said gently. "She won't." Michael wiped his eyes. "I told her we needed to postpone the wedding, that we needed couples counseling, that we needed to work on our relationship before we got married. She said no, said either we get married in 3 weeks as planned or we're done." "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be," Michael said. "You didn't do this. You just showed me what I should have seen months ago." He stayed for dinner that night. We ordered pizza, like we used to do when he was a teenager. We talked about everything and nothing, about his father, about memories from when he was growing up, about the future. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I'm going to end it," he said. "I should have done it after the bridal shower. I should have done it the first time she made a dismissive comment about you. But I kept thinking I could fix it, that love would be enough. I was wrong." "That doesn't make you weak," I said. "It makes you hopeful. That's not a bad thing." "Will you still cancel the venue?" he asked. I thought about it. About Jessica's face when she'd opened my gift, about her laughter in her mother's kitchen, about her plans for my future with my son and potential grandchildren. "Yes," I said, "I'm going to cancel it." "She's going to think you forced my hand," Michael said, "that you manipulated this whole situation." "Let her think what she wants," I said. "I know the truth. You know the truth. That's enough." Michael broke up with Jessica 2 days later. According to him, she cried, raged, begged, threatened, and finally called him every name she could think of. She called me worse ones, told him I'd manipulated him, that I was controlling and toxic, that he'd regret this for the rest of his life. But my son stood firm. The day after the breakup, I called Margaret. "I need to cancel the Kingston wedding," I said. "I'll process the cancellation," Margaret said quietly. "I'm sorry it came to this, Diane." "Don't be," I said. "This is exactly where it needed to come to." The next part was harder. Jessica's parents had to contact all the guests. The photographer, the caterer, the florist, the DJ, all had to be told the wedding was off. Some of them had cancellation fees, some didn't. And Jessica had to explain to everyone that her wedding was canceled because the venue fell through. She didn't tell people the truth, of course. She told them my family had some kind of financial emergency, and we'd had to back out of paying for the venue at the last minute, leaving her high and dry. That I'd promised to pay for it as a gift and then reneged. Some people believed her. Her friends, mostly. People who'd always seen her as the victim in any situation. But other people asked questions. Like why, if her wealthy father was supposedly paying for the venue all along, couldn't he just step up and secure it now? Like why, if they had 3 weeks' notice, they couldn't find an alternative location? The story started to unravel. People who'd been at the bridal shower remembered things. Remembered how Jessica had reacted to my gift, how her friends had laughed. Someone even remembered seeing me leave to go to the bathroom and come back looking upset. The truth came out in pieces, the way truth usually does. Jessica tried to control the narrative, but she couldn't. Within 2 weeks, most people knew some version of what had really happened. That Michael's mother had overheard his fiancée insulting her. That there was more to the story than a simple financial backing out. Jessica called me once during all of this. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. "I hope you're happy," she said, her voice venomous. "You ruined my life. You destroyed my wedding. You turned Michael against me." "I didn't do any of those things," I said calmly. "You did them yourself." "You're a bitter, miserable old woman," she spat. "You couldn't stand seeing your son happy with someone successful, someone better than you, so you sabotaged it." "If that's what helps you sleep at night," I said, "you go ahead and believe that." She hung up on me. That was 4 months ago now. Michael is doing well. He moved to a new apartment, threw himself into his work, started seeing a therapist to work through everything. He calls me 3 times a week. We have dinner every Sunday, sometimes at his place, sometimes at mine. He started dating again, nothing serious yet. But I see a difference in him. He's more careful now, more aware. He asks questions about how women treat service workers, how they talk about their own families, how they react when things don't go their way. He learned something from this. We both did. As for the money, yes, I lost $50,000, more than half of what I'd saved over a lifetime. But I don't regret it, not for a second, because I bought something with that money. I bought my son a clear view of who he was about to marry. I bought him a chance to start over before he was legally tied to someone who would have made him miserable. I bought myself the right to stand up for my own dignity instead of quietly accepting disrespect in the name of keeping the peace. $50,000 is a lot of money, but some things are worth more than money. Jessica, from what I hear through mutual acquaintances, is doing fine. She's dating someone new, someone with even more money than Michael ever had. I hope he knows what he's getting into. I hope he has a mother who loves him enough to pay attention to warning signs. As for me, I'm back to my quiet life. My little house in the older part of Charlotte, my garden, my quilting, my Sunday dinners with my son, and I sleep just fine at night. Because the truth is, I'm not a bitter old woman. I'm not frumpy or basic or pathetic. I'm a mother who loved her son enough to show him the truth, even when it was painful. I'm a widow who built a good life from scratch after loss. I'm a teacher who gave 35 years to helping kids learn and grow. I'm a woman who knows her own worth, and that's worth more than any wedding venue.